Welcome back to NBA Cinema, guys. So I want to talk about George Karl on today as Nancy Lieberman exposed something that many people already were thinking about George Karl. She brought it to the surface. And we're going to key in on two players, Boogie Cousins and Kenyon Martin, but also we know the well-documented issues with Carmelo Anthony. What we didn't know is George Karl, during his time coaching Seattle Supersonics, he had a problem with Ray Allen. Now, a lot of the other three that I mentioned, obviously, there's been character issues mentioned in the media, and so you can paint that a certain way. But when they started saying he had a problem with Ray Allen, I really had to listen. And this is coming from a player, Etan Thomas, who played many years in the NBA. I want to evaluate this whole situation. Now, we're going to look at some of the history and some of the things that Kenyon Martin and Boogie Cousins had to say themselves. Let's people.
Have you ever had to get in a coaching shit like that during the game?
Halftime, yeah. Okay. Mine in public, I tried to beat George. I was going to beat George up in Denver. Oh, no, I got suspended in the playoffs. We played the Clippers. Like the final three games, I played the first two games. Yeah, I got suspended for the rest of the playoffs.
You were suspended in 2006 for conduct detrimental to the team. What happened, and how's your relationship with George Karl?
George Karl, first and foremost. I was having knee problems before the playoffs. Came up with an agreement I was going to sit out a few games to get ready for the playoffs. George started Francisco Elson in my spot. Last few games go to him before the playoffs. I'm ready to rock. I'm ready to start. He said he's going to start Francisco. He want to reward him. We go game two. I tell him we lost game one. Back in the starting lineup. I'm going to start Francisco again. And now you're playing with me. We start the game. I played 7 minutes in the first half. So towards the end of the second quarter, he put Greg Buckner in for Eddie Nahara. I guess I'm not going back in. So by this time, I'm steaming. I was the first person off the bench. I'm going to the locker room. I go right in the hallway while they're in there talking. I step in between the coaches, and I threaten his life and everything. I threaten his well-being.
It was already beef from before I even got drafted there between Coach Karl and Demarcus, because Coach put out that remark of saying it's first of order. He trying to get rid of the best player on the team.
For sure. Yep.
What are we doing here?
It's real hectic.
Cal had hit me right when I got drafted, and he was like, "Hey man, you're going to probably the worst program in the league. Like, you know, you got to just keep your head down, stay out of trouble, just do the work, blah, blah, blah." And it was like, yeah, whatever, cool. And it was like that, though, bro. It was so weird in that first year. It was weird. It was weird, bro. I'm like, this is the league, bro? You know what I mean?
That's your first experience.
A coach can go to an organization, and the organization can already have that franchise guy. You're like, this is our guy, we want to move forward with him. And as a coach, can you coach this guy and move forward with him? If the coach agrees on it, then you agree on it. But a guy like George could come in and do all those things and, you know, go opposite of what he said he would do, and nothing is done about it, no backlash, nothing said about his name, no type of tarnishment.
Demarcus is a hell of a talent, but he's not a winning basketball player, at least when he was in Sacramento. I thought he was turning the corner when he was in New Orleans, and then he's been hurt so much lately. And I really think I brought a new dimension to DeMarcus's game, letting him go outside and play freely and more openly. I think, DeMarcus is one of these few guys who can play outside or can play inside. And I think that's an asset. But he also is playing in the era that the big man is losing its impact and in value in the game. You know, the one thing I was always mystified by is a lot of games I coached with DeMarcus, he was the best guy on the floor. He was the best player on the court, and we couldn't win.
This is the part of the NBA I really don't understand, because it's like you'll love when KG does it, right? Mm-hmm. KG is so loud, commanded on defense.
Yeah.
And if you watch Demarcus Cousins,
he was like that, huh?
No, but it goes beyond that. If you want to talk about it, I will.
Yeah, go ahead.
They were two times in the locker room. He tried to beat up George Karl.
Oh, I know that part.
and that's why he's not given a chance, because that coach's circle.
Yeah.
It is no joke.
Yeah,
And George Karl is
And I thought George was one of the most racist. I sat in the meetings. It was unbelievable. Ask Carmelo.
I like Nancy.
Now that last clip was a perfect segue into the next portion of what Etan Thomas has to say. I could never understand for the life of me why the Sacramento Kings would bring in a coach like George Karl if Demarcus Cousins is the guy they wanted to continue to move forward with, unless they were deliberately trying to run him out of town. He comes in his first press conference and say, we got to get Boogie Cousins out of town. He's really just throwing him under the bus, and that isn't going to build a relationship. Now, this next portion I want to really hone in on, because I'm going to really bring home my points after he says this, or after Etan Thomas discloses this information. Let's peep.
Right. So Nancy Lieberman was on a podcast with Michael Beasley, and she was telling that, in her opinion, that George Karl was racist. That's the words that she used. That he was racist. She sat in the meetings. She was disgusted by the things that she heard over and over again, that he would make racist remarks and nobody would say anything. And she said, yes, he's been racist for a very long time. That came as no surprise to me. But also, I have heard a lot of different players make accusations about him being racist. Carmelo Anthony, Kenyon Martin. You have his run-ins with Demarcus Cousins. He actually had an issue with Ray Allen. Who has a problem with Ray Allen? I haven't heard Ray Allen have an issue with anybody in the NBA ever, to be honest with you, as far as the coaching staff. But there was something that I remembered once I read this. And I was coming out of the draft. So this is going back to 2000. And I'm working out. So when you come out the draft, you're working out for different teams. I was working out for Milwaukee in their facility. So there's a few guys that were there working out with me. I think it was like Jamal McGlure and a few other guys. And I remember George Karl coming down the steps, walking down the steps looking like Boss Hogg. You remember Boss Hogg from that? Y'all might not know that reference, but Boss Hogg from the Dukes of Hazzard. That's how he walking down, and just with this arrogance. And he had, his clipboard and he's twirling his pencil, and so he said, "Hey, where's the fat black kid?" And I looked. He's like, "Well, is he somewhere, eating some chicken, or just somewhere greasy? Get his fat butt out here so we can run that chicken grease off." And I looked and I said, "Is that the way that he talking about?" And he was talking about Tractor Trailer. I heard this with my own ears.
I always thought it was a bit odd, George Karl's approach to talking about his former players online. He has keyed in on Kenyon Martin, Boogie Cousins, and Carmelo Anthony. Those are some of the players that he has honed in on really tough. And we're seeing why now. He has a personal issue with those guys. I think if you look at Larry Brown and Allen Iverson, right, they had issues while Allen Iverson was playing, right? Sometimes it might have been Larry Brown's fault. Sometimes it was Allen Iverson's fault. And Allen Iverson was able to acknowledge that, says he loves Larry Brown now, or when he continued to mature, he could appreciate some of the lessons. Not that he agreed with everything that's ever transpired between them, but he could take some of the lessons and, as an older man, look back at his younger self and say, okay, I see why he did that. Seems like George Karl doesn't have those moments with his players. Obviously, you're going to clash with your star player, but the point is to get them to the level. Don't disrespect them as a man, first and foremost. But they're even saying that George Karl went beyond those lines and disrespected him as a human, or these guys as a human, and, just has this way about him. I want to hear what Sean Kemp and Gary Payton endured as well. I would like to hear if those guys had any experiences like this. But yeah, man, Etan Thomas said, is he out there eating chicken or something? He had been prancing around this league a little too long, getting comfortable having those type of conversations. And when you see people speak that way, other people in power speak to them the same way where they've become comfortable. You're not comfortable if you're the only person feeling that way in your profession. So I think he was empowered, he was emboldened, and he didn't think that the power structure that was set up at the time, a David Stern, right, would get rid of him. You know what I'm saying? We saw how long Donald Sterling owned the Clippers. And, you know, he had that dreadful voice recording. Then he had to sell the team. But can you imagine how many people were getting away with that back in those days? You know, just having a mouthpiece like that and looking down on the players. You know, yeah, they entertaining and they can run up and down, they can jump high, they can shoot threes, but I'm still going to talk to them that way. George Karl, it's becoming abundantly clear that many of our suspicions about you, specifically when it hit the net, although he is foul for bringing these things back up, calling out Melo, calling out Boogie years, 20, 30 years after you done coached certain guys, right? 15 years, 10 years, however long it was. It has allowed a light to be shined on some of the mess you used to do, and some of the narrative around these guys, making it look like they were attacking you, because that's all we hear on SportsCenter. You know, Kenyon went in the locker room, tried to fight his coach. That is the only part of the story that's highlighted. You know, Carmelo not listening to George Karl, Boogie Cousins trying to jump on George Karl. That is the way that it's framed in the mainstream media. But now we see why these guys took drastic measures, you know, because you have to respect me as a man, family man, first and foremost, and then you can kind of command my respect, you know, as a player. Not that you won't have heated moments, right, where there's some back and forth verbiage, but for a player or several players on different teams trying to attack you several times on different occasions, that's more to say about you than them, because you're the common denominator. So let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Till next time. Peace.